Approximately 500 years ago, there was a tyrant Lycan king. Niall started his narration. When Lyra agreed to hear his version of the story, he oppressed all other packs for the benefit of the royal pack, which amassed wealth and unmatched power at the expense of others. While the royal pack lived in luxury, the rest of the kingdom was barely getting by. The king forced them to send slaves and tributes, stripping the packs of their best talents and driving many werewolves to poverty and near starvation. Nobody was brave enough to stand up to the king, but one day, the Scarlet Alpha said enough. Lyra frowned, because she had never heard of a Scarlet Alpha or a Scarlet Pack for that matter. The Scarlet Alpha, from which pack? The Scarlet Pack, Niall replied. You wouldn't know it. It has long gone extinct, and the royal family saw to it that it was wiped from history. After long enough, most werewolves forgot anything like it ever existed. Did the Scarlet Alpha attack the royal pack? Lyra asked. Niall shook his head. It never got to that. When the Scarlet Alpha raised his voice against the royal family, other packs that had been unable to oppose the king joined him. All packs united and raised their voices against the royal pack, demanding drastic changes to the king's policies. There were some armed conflicts where the king sent his warriors to punish packs that disobeyed his orders. But these packs received assistance from their allies, and soon it was clear that the kingdom was on the verge of a full-blown revolution. When the Lycan king realized that the packs were united against him, he decided to quell their rebellion once and for all. He invited the Scarlet Alpha and a few of the other most influential alphas working with him to the palace, claiming that he was ready to hear their grievances and discuss how to change his method of rule. They did not blindly trust him, did they? Lyra asked, sensing that making peace was not the king's true intention. No, they did not, Niall replied. The king was ruthless, and only a fool would walk into the palace expecting to come out alive. The Scarlet Alpha told the king that first, he had to make concessions to show his goodwill, and then the other alphas would meet him at a neutral location. The king agreed. That year, he not only did not ask the packs to send slaves to the palace, but he also released some of those in his possession to go back to their packs. The amount of tributes sent to the palace were also drastically reduced. However, the king was still heavily involved in the administration of the packs, something that did not sit well with the alphas. Did they meet as agreed? Lyra questioned. Yes. The meeting was arranged to take place at the Blacksword Pack, which was considered a neutral location. At that time, the Blacksword Alpha was a close friend of the Scarlet Alpha, so the packs felt safe, Niall narrated. Unknown to the Scarlet Alpha and the other representatives from the packs, the Blacksword Alpha had been on the king's side all along. As soon as they gathered in the meeting hall, they were ambushed and massacred. Not one of them escaped alive. While that was happening, the royal troops ambushed the Scarlet Pack and destroyed it, leaving only dead bodies and destroyed structures behind. Within a few hours, everything was burnt to ashes. As soon as the news spread, all other packs were terrified, and the alliance broke apart. Nobody was willing to take in the few survivors from the Scarlet Pack, and they ended up disappearing into the jungle, where they became the first rogues. Lyra was listening intently, captivated by the turn of events. She has not imagined that such horror would be the origin of the rogues. Even more, she would not have imagined that the royal pack was the villain. She had always thought rogues were simply rebels from various packs, as there were bound to be rebels anywhere. She had never expected that one incident would have been the start of everything. That is horrible, she said. She could not imagine what the Scarlet Pack members went through. After suffering such a tragedy, getting abandoned by those they thought they could rely on must have been devastating. The Lycan King continued his reign of terror for many years afterwards, and the packs never again rose against him. Niall continued. However, during that period many werewolves left their packs to join the former Scarlet Pack members in the jungle. The plan was to form a force strong enough to challenge the royal family. But since all packs were under strict instructions to quell any rogues within or near their territories, they had a hard time surviving, let alone forming a force that could attack the palace. The book has mentioned some of that, and it says that the next Lycan King turned things around when he came to power, Lyra said. It also says he offered the rogues a chance to return to society. Why didn't they? Niles scoffed. Do you think it was that easy? Have you forgotten what the first king did to them? Were they going to walk out of hiding like sheep marching to the slaughterhouse? Lyra nodded, understanding why the rogues might not have trusted the new king. But the king abolished all the previous oppressive policies and helped all packs in the kingdom to develop. It makes sense to not trust his intention in the beginning, but why did they not take his offer even after several years? Has the book mentioned that this king was not the immediate successor of the tyrant, but his great-grandson? Niall asked. Lyra shook her head. Number, I told you. The book is useless. The royal family must have commissioned it to change the narrative, he scoffed. Even after the tyrant king passed away, his son continued the reign of terror, and after that, his grandson. Generations of rogues suffered under their rule, and that grudge was cultivated generation after generation. Now tell me, if you were one of them, would you forget all the suffering and injustices just because someone told you to? Would you simply forget your ancestors' grievances and eat with the same enemy who massacred them in cold blood? But it was a different king, Lyra said, and he was determined to change things. He wanted to end the suffering and the conflict. The royal family had tortured everybody for ages, and you think they should have gotten away without paying? Niall asked, giving her a ridiculous look. The only thing they could do to appease the rogues was to let go of the throne and return all the riches they gathered by exploiting other packs? Do you think they were willing to do so? Lyra remained silent. Niall scoffed. What did I expect from you? You think they are the good ones, and we are the bad ones. Who are they to think they can decide when to go to war and when to make peace? Could they return all the lives they had butchered? I understand, Lyra said. But it has been so many centuries, and now all packs thrive under the royal pack. Why all the animosity all these years later? You understand, Niall mocked. Someone like you cannot understand. You eat and sleep with the same people who mistreated you. You have no sense of honor, so I don't expect you to understand at all. I heard that you went through hell at the Red Moon Pack, but what did you do when you returned as a powerful she-wolf? You put your life on the line for them. Werewolves like you are the reason my ancestors suffered for decades under the royal family. You are spineless and cannot fight for yourselves, let alone for anyone else. You are right. I cannot understand, Lyra told him. She did not just say it to avoid angering him, but she knew she was in no place to judge the rogues' decisions. But after the conversations she had with the rogues at the Red Moon Pack, she wondered how many of them wanted to keep up the conflict with the kingdom. I just think all of this can end with a conversation. The rogues are still overpowered. Why keep sending your people to their deaths? Will you fight forever? Fight forever! Niall spat. I've overpowered the Lycan King, and I am now in charge of the royal pack. What are you talking about? After all these centuries, I've done what my ancestors could not. Everything is under my control, and soon my people will get their share. Those who have waited for generations will finally be avenged. They'll finally be able to walk free without fear of persecution. What about the werewolves of the kingdom? Lyra asked. What about them? He asked incredulously. Our ancestors rose up to fight for them, and like cowards they ran away with their tails tucked between their legs, as if betraying us was not enough. They turned against us, killing us like flies to appease the royal family. They are all one and the same. We'll take everything they owe us, and everything will be like it should have been centuries ago. Won't that make you like the tyrant king who led to the rise of the rogues? Lyra asked before her brain could catch up with her mouth. She instantly regretted her question. Even before she saw the storm brewing, on Niall's face. "How dare you compare me to him?" he growled, his nostrils flaring. "They started this, and we are ending it. He oppressed us without being provoked. What excuse did he have, other than greed and cowardice? But we, who were cast out and murdered for years, how dare you say we are the same? These packs have been living in luxury, hunting us down for sport. They deserve whatever is coming for them. Every single one of them." Lyra gulped and shrunk back into her seat. Niall's voice had grown with every word out of his mouth, and now he was outright yelling at her. "You have every right to avenge your people," she said. "I am simply worried that both the rogues and the others will suffer. After all, the packs will fight back. This won't end as easily as you think. If you care about your people, Shut up!" Niall roared, suddenly wrapping his hands around her throat. Lyra's eyes widened as her hands reached for his, but she could not do anything against his strong hold. He had cut off her airway completely. Niall's face was a mask of rage, his eyes red. He growled, tightening his grip around her neck. "Stupid bitch, I'll kill you. You know nothing, nothing." He let go of her, and Lyra fell forward, sputtering and wheezing. She ended up on the floor of the car, fighting for breath. Her throat and lungs felt like they were on fire. And she knew she had escaped narrowly. Any longer, and he would have killed her. Just then, the car stopped outside the palace. "You'll stay in your room until I say otherwise," Niall said, glaring straight ahead. "It'll be on guard throughout the day and night, so don't get any ideas. I might not do anything to you because of your wolf, but your mate will pay for your insolence. Next time, think before you open your stupid mouth." He opened the door and left. Lyra's entire body was shaking from a mixture of shock, anxiety, and fear. What was he going to do with Julian? After confining Lyra in her room for a few days, Niall arrived with news of a royal banquet. "This is your chance to show me whose side you are on," he told her after presenting her with the gown she was to wear for the occasion. "I have invited alphas, lunas, and elders from all around the kingdom. The banquet is in your honor as the future queen, so I expect you to act the part. Will you have a problem with that?" "No," she said, eyeing the gown. It was a red gown, embellished with glimmering gems. Alongside it was a beautiful diamond tiara, which Lyra recognized as being one of the royal family's heirlooms. "Good," he said, holding her chin and lifting her face. "If you help me get through this banquet, you'll have done your job well, and I'll make sure Julian continues getting the best medical care. But if you make a mistake," he trailed off, moving his hand to her throat and resting it there, "you'll pay." "I understand," she told him. Such a gathering could go very wrong for him if his true identity was revealed. Niall let go of her and stepped back. "The event will begin in an hour's time. Get ready, and I'll come to escort you to the hall when it is time." When Lyra walked into the banquet hall later side by side with Niall, everybody turned to stare in applause. Scanning the room, Lyra realized that Niall had not lied about the attendance. None of the alphas or lunas present, however, had any clue that this was not Julian, but the rogue king. Lyra suspected that Niall intended to use the occasion to find out sensitive information from the pack leaders, but there was nothing she could do at the moment. She hoped that a chance would present itself to reveal his deception. But she had to be careful so it wouldn't backfire. "Your dress is so pretty," one of the lunas commented when a group of alpha females walked up to Lyra after Niall stepped aside with one of the alphas. "Where did you buy it?" "Julian got it for me," Lyra replied with a fake smile. "You are so lucky," one of the others said. "Looking at the two of you together, it is clear that he is good to you. I am so jealous. Tell us the secret," the third one said. "How did you win his heart?" She looked at her friends with a knowing smile. "Many of us have tried before, but he was as cold as stone." "Well, he is my fated," Lyra replied. "Ah, yes," the first one said, hitting her wrist on her forehead. I keep forgetting, but that explains it. To be honest, I never thought His Majesty would accept a lowly mate, even if she was his fated one. Everyone knows he was considering mating with one of the alpha females. Well, that is the force of the mate bond, the second one said, taking a sip of her champagne. She smiled at Lyra. Don't you agree? Lyra barely held back an eye roll, plastering on another fake smile. She nodded. She knew that the females did not teak her and were only pretending convincingly to like her because she was the future queen. It must be so hard adjusting to life in the palace when you were used to being just a... The third one started, but trailed off suggestively before continuing. You should come to one of our social events so you can acquaint yourselves with the right kind of people. You are right, number 2 said, shortly after throwing her friend a narrow-eyed look that looked like a warning. Suni of the Clearwater Pack is having a hunting party next month. You should come. Can you hunt? She worked as a slave. Where do you think she would have learned to hunt? Number 1 asked. The hunt is attended by the best hunters. Do you want to put the life of our future Luna Queen in danger? But I heard that she won the first place at the royal training. Number 3 said. Isn't that right, Lyra? Before she could answer, number 1 jumped in again. Of course she won. She is the future queen. If you took part in the program, would you dare go against the king's favorite? Lyra blinked, her fake smile becoming increasingly tiresome. She had a few jabs on the tip of her tongue, but she did not want to cause any trouble that would attract Niall's attention. Lyra excused herself and left the group, making her way to the other side of the room. After stopping to talk to a few more guests, she made her way outside. Finding a secluded bench, she sat down with a glass of wine. It was quiet for a few moments before she heard movement. Then the sound of feminine voices reached her. Did you see that? The first one asked, and Lyra instantly recognized it as one of the females she had just been speaking with. She must think she is one of us. This entire thing is ridiculous, but what can we do? Another one from the same group as before asked, not invited her to the hunting party for one. The other said snarkily, what were you thinking? I cannot stand being in the same place as her, leave alone the same room. You'll have to get over it when she becomes the queen. The first one said, if she becomes the queen, the other said, if she is his fated mate, it is a done deal. Let's see. The other said, unconvinced, what are you going on about? Would you dare go up against the king? Did you forget what happened to Black Sword? Who said anything about going up against him? All males are the same. They are all after the same thing. I just have to do what she did, but better. One of the others laughed. You were not even in the initial consideration to become the Luna Queen. What makes you think he'll be interested in you? Was she in the consideration? Her friend shot back. She is his fated mate. So, mates die, don't they? There was a heavy silence before she added, just saying. I am surprised Crystal is here, her friend said, eager to ignore what she had said. After what had happened with the Blacksword Pack, nobody wanted to be associated with any sentiments that may be considered a threat to the royal family. Does she have no pride? After what happened to her pack, do you think she can afford pride? The other asked. No, this is stopping too low, their companion said. It is such a disgrace to see an alpha female behave like this. After what the king did to her and her family, how can she bear to show her face here? Everybody knows he discarded her for a lowly she-wolf. After such humiliation, how can she still walk among us with her head held high? Who knows? You should always keep your enemies as close to you as possible. Crystal has always been tenacious. If you think you are only against the slave Omega for the king's heart, think again. Their words were nothing new to Lyra. She knew what the high-ranked werewolves thought about her, and what they must be saying behind closed doors. All she could think was that it would be hilarious if one of them decided to pursue Julian at that moment. Would they show their face when they found out it was the rogue king? Leaving the garden, Lyra sneaked upstairs and went to her room. She had just shut the door behind her and taken a couple of steps into the room when the door opened behind her. Turning, she found Crystal walking into the room. "What do you want?" Lyra asked, sighing tiredly. She was tired of acting for hours, tired of pretending, tired of it all. The last thing she wanted was to deal with Crystal. Crystal stomped over to her, pointing a finger at her. "I'm not going to let you ruin this for me," she seethed. "Julian, he is the reason you are doing this for Niall, right? What if he didn't exist?" Lyra's annoyed expression fell. "What?" she asked sharply. "Will you still help the rogue king if he kills Julian?" Crystal asked her. "He won't kill him," Lyra said. Crystal smirked and said nothing. An uneasy feeling washed over Lyra, and she took a step towards Crystal. "If you touch him..." "What?" Crystal snapped. "What will you do? Niall will get rid of him in the end anyway. You are naive if you think he'll keep him alive. Once he uses you to get what he wants, he'll get rid of you too." She scoffed, shaking her head. "I thought you were smarter than this, but you are so stupid. Get out of my room." Lyra told her calmly. "This is all an act," Crystal said, gesturing to Lyra's outfit. "In the end, I am the one who'll become the queen of this kingdom. Never forget that." She turned around and left the room as quickly as she had appeared, slamming the door behind her. Even though she was used to Crystal's harsh words and threats, Lyra was unsettled by what she had said. Was Julian safe? Crystal had wanted Niall to introduce her as the future queen. As the Lycan King, he could make up any excuse to reinstate her in the position. Instead, he had made the banquet in honor of Lyra, even if he was not really Julian. This must have angered her seriously. Lyra was well aware that unlike Niall, Crystal was not keen on keeping her alive. She had once claimed to wanting to keep her as a pet, but after seeing how Niall treated her, there was no doubt that Crystal would happily kill Lyra any chance she got. If she could not harm Lyra, her target would be Julian. By getting rid of Julian, there would be no reason for Lyra to obey Niall, and their deal would be off. Walking out of her room, Lyra started towards the southern wing of the palace. It was where Julian had held Anna in confinement, and she suspected that Niall must be holding Julian there too. The place was just as deserted as it had been back then. The room where Anna has been staying was locked, and Lyra could not sense Julian through their bond. She continued farther down the hallway and took a right turn, finding more doors that way. She was halfway down that hallway when she sensed Julian's scent and stopped in her tracks. It was faint, but she was certain of it. Trying the door nearest to her, she found it locked. His scent got stronger as she moved to the next, but it was also locked. At the third door, the scent weakened. She hurried back to the door in the middle, and right at that moment she heard voices coming from the other side. There was no exit on that side. So to get away, she would either have to get into one of the rooms or go back the way she came, and that was not an option. The middle door opened. Just as she reached for the handle again, Spencer, the royal healer, was on the other side. He reached for her arm and pulled her into the room, then shut the door quickly. Inside there, Julian's scent was strong, and when she turned, she found him sitting on an examination table. "Julian," Lyra whispered, an overwhelming relief washing over her. Julian jumped down from the examination table and met her halfway. Their arms went around each other. When they pulled back, her eyes were shining with tears. She raised her hands to his face and cupped his cheeks, examining his face. It felt like it had been forever since she had last seen him. This was the same face that Niall was parading around, and yet there was such a huge difference. This was Julian, her Julian. "Are you okay?" she asked him, lowering her hand to his chest and moving his robe aside. There was a dark mark where he was stabbed, but the wound had healed up. "I'm fine," he told her, taking her hand. Almost. Feeling relieved, Lyra embraced him again, resting her face on his chest. "What about you?" Julian asked, palming her hair. "I'm all right," she told him. "Don't worry about me." He pulled her back and looked at her with a concerned frown. "Are you eating well? Where are you staying?" "I'm staying in my own room, and I'm eating well. As long as I keep my end of the deal, he is treating me like his partner," she revealed. "You cannot trust him," Julian told her solemnly. "When he doesn't need you anymore, he'll not treat you as nicely." "I can protect myself," she assured him. Looking at Spencer, she asked, "What's his condition?" "His wounds are all healed, and he'll be as good as new in a few days. However, his wolf is quite weak, and that might take longer to recover. He won't be as powerful as usual for a while," Spencer explained. If Julian's wolf was weak, he could not fight against Niall. So even if his wounds were healed, he was not in a position to challenge the Rogue King. If only there was a way to help his wolf. Lyra's eyes widened as she recalled her ordeal against the corrupted wolves in the royal forest. She had lost control of her wolf, and it was Julian who had helped her stabilize it. If mating had helped her, maybe it could work for Julian's wolf too. "I think I can help your wolf heal," Lyra told Julian. He shook his head instantly. "Number, I don't want you to use your powers on me. You need every bit of your strength to protect yourself in case he turns against you." "I'm talking about the power of our bond," Lyra told him. "Remember how you helped my wolf recover after my first shift?" "You are right," Spencer said. "The power of your bond can help his wolf recover. It will not cost anything." "If that's so okay," Julian agreed. "We can give it a try. I'll leave you two, but I'll be back in a couple of hours," Spencer told them. "I'll make sure no one comes into the room." After Spencer left the room, Julian pulled Lyra closer to him, pressing their bodies together again. Lowering his head, he gave her a gentle kiss. As the kiss intensified, tears fell down Lyra's face. Pressing their foreheads together, Julian wiped the tears away with his thumbs. "Don't cry, I'm here," Lyra sucked in a shuddering breath. "I want to take you and run away to somewhere far from here." "This is our home," Julian whispered softly. "We won't run. We'll get it back." Lyra lifted her eyes to his. "I missed you so much." "I missed you too," he told her, kissing her cheeks softly. "It'll be fine, I promise." "It worked," Julian said in awe, lifting his hands in front of his face. He could feel his wolf's power surging through him, potent and unrestricted. "Really?" Lyra asked, rising on her elbow. They were lying side by side on the examination table after a frantic love-making session that left their bodies slick with sweat and out of breath. "Yes," Julian confirmed. "He is fully restored." "Great!" Lyra exclaimed, feeling thrilled. Leaning towards him, she gave him a kiss. He sunk his hand into her hair and held her in place, deepening the kiss. When they pulled apart, there was an amused smile on Julian's face. "What is it?" she asked him, curious. "Yuri is impatient to tear that bastard into pieces," he revealed. Lyra nodded. "That makes 4 of us." Ray was also excited and already urging Lyra to get out there and ruin Niall's grand plan. With Yuri by her side, she felt invincible. Lyra felt the same way about having Julian with her, but she knew it was crucial to have a good plan before trying anything. "We'll take him down this time," Julian said with conviction. "Spencer told me that he is holding a banquet in the palace." "Yes," Lyra confirmed with a nod. "He has invited alphas, lunas, and important elders from all over the kingdom." "Have you heard from Zero and Beryl?" Julian asked her. Lyra shook her head. "Number, but since he hasn't captured them, I assume they escaped the palace safely. They must be keeping a low profile and working on a plan. None of the pack leaders in attendance today seem to be aware of Niall's true identity. This would be a good time to expose him," Julian said. "We have the audience. Once we reveal his true identity, it will be over for him." Also, with all these alphas around, we have enough warriors to take down however many rogues he has brought into the palace. He was right. It was a great opportunity to let everyone know what was going on. But what if Niall turned things around on them? He could claim that Julian was the imposter, and with the power of the witches on his side, Lyra was afraid he would be able to convince the others. She would not be worried about that if she was in control of her own powers. All along, Niall had been using a talisman that prohibited her from using her powers without his permission. If she tried to use her influence on the guests, he would know instantly and shut them off. "I know, but it's risky," she told Julian. "We have no one else on our side. It'll be easy for him to make the others think we are the imposters. I cannot use my powers right now, so I cannot help us get the upper hand." Julian nodded, looking thoughtful. As much as he wanted to take the Rogue King down, he did not want to put Lyra at risk. They would have one shot at reclaiming the palace, and he did not want to ruin it. He had just gotten back his power and was impatient to get rid of Niall, but he knew doing so without a good plan could quickly go wrong. "I should get back," Lyra said, climbing down from the table. She collected her discarded panties and pulled them on, then reached for her gown. Julian's eyes were on her the entire time, and she felt a knot growing in her throat. She wanted to stay with him. A part of her was afraid that she would not be able to see him soon. What if Niall found out that Julian got all his power back and did something to keep him from being able to attack him? What if he found out that Lyra sneaked in to see Julian and punished them both for it? He could use that as an excuse to end their deal and kill Julian, or he could kill both of them. After all, he had already used Lyra to convince the pack leaders that he was the true Lycan King. Lyra could see how it would all play out. After killing them, Niall could parade their bodies and claim that Julian was an imposter, with whom Lyra had been colluding with. If they believed him, why wouldn't they even zero, and Beryl would not be able to reveal the truth of what happened? "What are you thinking about?" Julian asked. Noticing the anxious expression on her face, he got down too and pulled on his robe. "How much I'll miss you," she lied, giving him a small smile. "We'll be together soon," he told her, stepping behind her to help her zip her gown. "You must stay safe until then." "You too," she told him. There was a knock on the door at that moment, and Lyra tensed. "It's Spencer," Julian informed her. The others wouldn't bother knocking. Spencer walked into the room a moment later after Julian unlocked it from the inside. "Did it work?" "Yes," Julian told him. "Good," Spencer said. "I have received information that Zero and Beryl have just arrived in the palace for the banquet." "What?" Lyra exclaimed in surprise, looking at Julian and then back at Spencer. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Yes." Lyra knew the two wouldn't show up at the palace without a plan. Niall knew that they were aware of his true identity, so they would not be safe unless they had a plan. They wouldn't show up. "We should do it today," Julian said. "With Zero and Beryl here. This is our best chance to end this." Lyra agreed. Suddenly, it was now or never. "Where have you been?" Niall asked, when Lyra appeared at his side a while later. After separating with Julian, Lyra had gone to her room to freshen up, to get rid of any scent that would give away the fact that she had been with Julian. "I went on a walk with some of the guests, and we wandered around the palace," she told him. "Was I gone for long?" "Yes," he said, his voice tinged with displeasure. "Stay by my side from now on." "Of course," she agreed, giving him a smile. "There are some important guests you haven't met," he said, steering her towards a group of guests. "They are from the Northern Pax Alliance. You know what to do." Lyra knew of the Northern Pax Alliance. It was a group of 3 Paxes Sky, Northern and Farron. The northern part of the kingdom had once been overrun by rogues, but the 3 Pax came together and defeated them. Since then, the 3 had grown exponentially, becoming some of the most secure, stable, and feared packs in all of the kingdom. while other packs sought to curry favor with the royal family to maintain their influence. Those three did not need to do so. It's so nice to finally meet you. The Luna of the Farun pack, Isabel, said when they had their attention. We have heard so much about you, but never had the chance to meet in person. Stories of your brevity have reached even the most remote northern parts, Eric, the Beta of the Sky Pack said. We were very happy when His Majesty announced that you would be our Luna Queen. Thank you for your kind words, Lyra said. We are very grateful to all of you for keeping our northern borders safe. It's all been possible because of His Majesty's guidance, Alpha Theo of the Northern Pack said. He is a tactical genius. With the two of you together, we are more assured now. Sandra, the Luna of the Sky Pack said. It's one thing to have a great king. It's an even better thing to also have a brilliant queen. We believe the changes you have heralded will change our kingdom for the better. I agree with you, Niall said, looking down at Lyra. It was a long wait, but when she appeared, she turned out to be exactly who I needed. In the short time we have been together, she has taught me many things, and I'm a better leader because she is right beside me. He gave her a lovey-dovey smile and leaned in, kissing her cheek. Lyra did her best to appear smitten, as if his gaze and words were enough to steal her breath. In truth, she was biding her time, looking for the perfect moment to expose him. When Niall pulled back, Lyra noticed Crystal watching them from not far away. Her eyes were glaring daggers at Lyra, and their eyes met and held for a few moments. Seeing an opportunity, Lyra seized it. Miss Black, why don't you join us? She called to her. The group turned to look at Crystal, who was caught by surprise by Lyra's invitation. Oh, I did not know she was here. Isabel commented. She is sorry for the things her father did and wants to make it up to everyone. Lyra said, her voice just as loud. It's such a shame, Theo said. Blacksword has always been one of the pillars of this kingdom. I worked with Alpha Black before, and I would never have expected him to do something so disgraceful. When Blacksword fell, the entire kingdom suffered. Eric suffered. Suffered? Crystal asked with a sneer, finally walking up to them. All of you are here kissing up to the royal family, aren't you? The king framed my father, and now you get to act like loyal dogs. Miss Black, Isabel said, watch your words, you are talking to the king. Crystal glared at Niall. Am I? Excuse me. Niall snapped, narrowing his eyes in warning. You are all stupid, Crystal said, gesturing to the guests and raising her voice. You cannot even tell when a fake is standing right in front of you. What makes you think you can judge my father? Crystal, we don't understand, Sandra said. What are you talking about? I think Miss Black has had too much to drink, Niall said. I'll have her escorted to her quarters. I'm not drunk, she denied. Whether you like it or not, the truth that you are the rogue king pretending to be the Lichen King will be revealed today. I will not be. Niall slapped her, cutting off her words and sending her stumbling to the ground. What nonsense, he bellowed. Your father was a traitor, and I tried giving you a chance to redeem yourself and your pack, but it seems I was wrong to trust you. Why would you make such a claim? Isabel asked Crystal, horrified. Because it's true. A new voice joined in. They looked to find Zero walking towards them, accompanied by Beryl and Anna. The one standing before you is the rogue king, he continued. He is pretending to be His Majesty with the help of witchcraft. He attacked His Majesty a few weeks ago and has since been in charge of the palace. What's this nonsense? Niall growled. He reached for Lyra's arm and gave it a squeeze, silently ordering her to use her powers to take charge of the situation. That is the king's cousin, right? Someone in the crowd asked. Yes. Someone else answered. That's Alpha Zero of the Azure Pack. Why would he make such a claim when he is a member of the royal family? With all of us here, this is the best chance to defeat him. Beryl spoke out. The guests looked at each other, seeming hesitant. Murmurs arose in the hall, but no one made a move to challenge Niall. Believe us, Beryl pleaded. I am Beryl of the Beaver Pack, and this is Alpha Zero of the Azure Pack. We are part of the royal family, and we were among the first people to realize his true identity. Many others have been executed. Do not be fooled by him. He is not Julian. Do something. Niall seethed at Lyra. What are you waiting for? A sudden commotion rose from the direction of the entrance. The crowd parted as someone walked into the hall, heading towards the center of the action. Your Majesty. One of the elders said hesitantly when Julian appeared. What is going on? There are two kings. It's over, Julian said, looking at Niall. Niall, who was shocked at Julian's sudden appearance, raised his hand and pointed at him. Who the hell are you? He yelled. Drop the act, Julian told him. The clamor had died as the guests watched the two of them in shock. Let's duel and see who is who between us. Lyra left Niall's side and went to stand beside Julian, which caused another stir among the guests. Lyra, what are you doing? Niall asked, pretending to be hurt and confused. Who is he? What's the meaning of this? It's over, Niall, Lyra said, calling him by his real name. The real Lycan King is here. Looking around, she addressed the guests. That is the Rogue King who has been trying to take over the kingdom. He imprisoned His Majesty and forced me to work for him. How absurd, Niall yelled. Lyra, how could you do this to me? I trusted you despite what everyone said about you, and this is how you repay me. Have you been working for the rogues all this time? He could be right, someone said. Nobody knows anything about her background. Maybe she is a spy sent by the rogues. I knew something did not make sense about her. The Alpha of the Luminous Pack, Lucian, yelled, stepping forward. Why would the king choose a nobody over my daughter? She must have bewitched him. This is the real king, Lyra said. I can prove it with our mate bond. We are not fools, one of the Lunas said. The mate bond will prove nothing. Maybe all this time your real mate has been the Rogue King. He sent you here to bewitch and confuse His Majesty. It all makes sense now, someone added. When she went to the Red Moon Pack, she spared the rogues. Why would she spare our enemies? They killed hundreds of werewolves and destroyed the pack. And yet, she formed a new pack with them and forced the members of the Red Moon Pack to live with the very rogues who terrorized them. The rogues surrendered and wished to leave the Rogue King, Lyra explained. That's why I accepted them into the new pack. Is that so? Someone challenged. I heard that you killed Alpha Devon with your own hands. What can you say about that? Alpha Devon was under a spell and had gone wild, killing his own pack members. Lyra replied, killing him was the only way to stop him. What an excuse! You must have bewitched him yourself. Is that why you volunteered to go to the pack? It must have been your plan all along. Don't forget. Another added, pointing at Zero and Beryl, these two accompanied her to the Red Moon Pack. They must have been working with her all this time. Watch your words, an elder from the Azure Pack warned, stepping forward. Alpha Zero grew up with His Majesty, and they are as close as brothers. He has always helped His Majesty with administration matters in the kingdom. He would never ally with our enemies. Nobody thought Alpha Black would scheme against the royal family either, Alpha Lucian countered. Maybe Alpha Zero wanted to be the Lycan King instead. Isn't the female beside him a witch? Anna is my mate, and she is a werewolf like all of us, Zero said, shifting to stand in front of Anna. She is not involved in any of this. She might be a werewolf, but didn't she grow up among witches? Alpha Lucian questioned. Why did she suddenly come to live among us? Maybe she has bewitched you too. Detain all of them, Niall roared. I'll get to the bottom of this and reveal all the traitors. No, Beryl shouted. We know that you have already killed many of us who knew your true identity. You want to kill us too so that nobody will reveal the truth about you. Frantically, she turned to the others. Do not let him get away with this. He is lying to all of you. I can detain all the suspects in my pack until we get to the bottom of this. Alpha Lucian said, You want to detain members of the royal family? The elder from the Azure Pact demanded. Are you out of your mind? I'll take the female, Lucian said, pointing at Lyra, and the one claiming to be the Lycan King. After that, we can carry out investigations to find out the truth. Lyra is going nowhere, Julian said, reaching for her arm and pulling her to his side. Touch her, and you'll die. Look around you, Lucian said. You cannot defeat all of us, surrender or die. You are so sure that he is telling the truth, and we are lying, Julian said. Are you in cohorts with him? What? Lucian bellowed. Are you accusing me of treason? You must be angry that I did not choose your daughter to be the Luna Queen, Julian said. So you joined hands with our enemies to remove me from my throne. That's also why you want to accuse my mate falsely. I've always been loyal to the royal family, and I would never plot with our kingdom's enemies, Alpha Lucian swore. You are the one trying to confuse everyone here with the help of that female beside you. You have always been hot-headed, Julian said, his tone disapproving. Always rushing into situations without taking a chance to examine things and know what's going on. I warned you about this tendency of yours last summer, didn't I? Alpha Lucian's confident stance wavered as he blinked in confusion. What? What are you going to do if another innocent life is lost because of your recklessness? Julian asked him. Or do you think you are safe because your pack is close to the royal pack? What happened last summer? Someone asked curiously. Alpha Lucian remained quiet, the color on his face draining. Then there's Alpha Van, Julian said, turning to one of the guests. A month ago, you came to me, begging for financial aid from the royal family. Your beta, who you chose against the pack elder's approval, embezzled funds and ran away. You did not want to face backlash, and wanted to hide the truth of the matter. I'm the only one who knows about this. I told you to recover the lost money and bring the beta to custody. Have you done so? What is he talking about? Alpha Van's Luna, who was standing right beside him, asked. Didn't you tell me that Beta Antony left to live among humans? Is it true? An elder of the same pack asked Alpha Van. Luna Sandra, Julian continued, turning to another guest. When I visited the Sky Pack with my father as a young boy, rogues ambushed our hunting party. You had followed us against your father's orders, but you ended up being the one who saved my life. You were afraid you would be punished for disobeying your father. So we told no one about it. Is this true, Luna? Beta Eric asked as all attention turned to Sandra. Yes, she replied. Until this day, I've never told anyone else about what happened that day. Do you need more proof of who I really am? Julian asked, looking around the room. For many of you, you'd rather I don't say your secrets out loud. Should I continue? His eyes rested on one of the males who had a troubled expression on his face. Alpha On. No. Alpha On replied immediately, shaking his head. No, Your Majesty. I believe it's you. Does anyone here wish to question my true identity? Julian asked. Gesturing between him and Niall, he said, We can see which one between us two know you really well. For a long moment, the two males locked gazes, neither making a move. Julian knew he had pushed Niall into a corner. To help him better pretend to be the Lycan King, Crystal must have revealed some information to him. But there were some things that Julian knew about the gathered leaders and their packs that Crystal had no idea about. If Niall could not show that he had such secret knowledge of them, it would be enough to convince the guests. Niall's gaze moved from Julian to Lyra. Anger coursed through him at the thought that all along she had been plotting against him. He should have killed her alongside Julian a long time ago. You should never have betrayed me, Crystal said to him. If I cannot be the Luna Queen, you cannot be the Lycan King. Niall thrust his arm out and struck her as his anger overflowed. Crystal yelled in pain as she fell back into the guests who had gathered behind her. While guests scrambled to help her, Niall rushed towards Julian. Mid-stride, He dropped his disguise and revealed his true face, and a collective gasp spread throughout the banquet hall. Lyra and those around Julian barely got out of the way in time as Niall crashed into Julian, pushing him into the table behind him. The two males went crashing into the table, sending it to the ground. As they hit the ground, Julian rolled out of Niall's grip and crouched a few feet away, ready to pounce. Niall's eyes turned red as he initiated his shift, and Julian followed a moment later. Niall's gray wolf was huge and imposing, but Julian's black wolf was bigger and far more majestic. When the two wolves stood in front of each other, the hall quickly emptied. The banquet hall was about to become a battlefield, and no one wanted to be caught in between. When such powerful alphas clashed, no one could interrupt even if they wanted to. The growls from both wolves filled the hall like thunder as they rushed towards each other. Their heavy bodies slammed into each other, their limbs tangling as each sought to gain control over the other. "He is no match for His Majesty," Alpha On commented. "This will be over sooner than later." While others agreed with that sentiment, Lyra watched the battle closely, ready to jump in case of anything. Everybody might be confident that Julian would defeat the Rogue King, but this was the same Rogue King who had stabbed him and almost killed him. The Lycan King was invincible among werewolves, but Niall was being aided by the witches. There was no telling what trick he would pull next. The sounds of furniture breaking and bodies slamming against the walls and floor traveled beyond the hall. The only indication of the fight going on for those who could not see into the hall. Finally, everything went silent. Lyra was the first to rush through the doors of the hall. It looked like a tornado had torn through the hall, throwing everything around. Julian stood in the middle of the hall in his human form while Niall lay motionless on the floor, blood pooling around his body. Lyra snatched a tablecloth from the floor as she rushed to Julian, her eyes scanning his body for any injuries. Other than a few scratches or bruises, there didn't seem to be anything serious. "We did it," he told her as she draped the cloth around his shoulders. "Yes, we did," Lyra said, relief pouring through her. She heard movement behind her as the guests trooped back into the hall. "Everybody, your king." Zero's voice sounded through the clamor. When Lyra turned around, she found all the guests getting on their knees, bowing to their king. Finally, after Niall's death, the royal troops scoured the palace for rogues. They also searched the capital city and found many who had been waiting for orders from Niall, much to Julian's displeasure. As soon as order was restored in the palace, Lyra announced that she wanted to go back to the Red Moon Pack. Not only that, but she also wanted to bring the willing rogues to her pack. "Everybody accused you of working with the enemy when they found out you spared the rogues who attacked Red Moon," he told her. "Why do you want to take in these ones too? If I don't, where else will they go?" she asked him. "Nowhere," he replied. "They'll stay in the dungeons where they belong. They infiltrated the capital and the palace. They must pay for their crimes." "They were simply obeying their king's orders," Lyra argued. "When I interrogated them after Niall's death, they were willing to live peacefully in the kingdom. Most of them are powerless werewolves who could only have relied on a powerful alpha like Niall to survive." "You are too kind," Julian said. "Niall is dead, but who is to say no one else will rise up to lead them against our kingdom? They might be without a leader now, but one will rise sooner or later. They always do. Then, let us take away their need for a leader," she said. Julian frowned. "What do you mean?" "Niall told me the history of the rogues," she told him. "This conflict has been built on centuries' worth of grudges. As long as we keep treating each other as enemies, it will never end. My former pack has a lot of territory, and I'll settle them there to avoid conflicts with the existing Red Moon Pack members. In the end, everyone will benefit. If they turn out to be a threat to others, I'll take responsibility." "You don't have to do this," he told her. "I'm the Wolf Mother," she told him. "I'm supposed to unite all werewolves, and that includes the rogues. I'm supposed to protect all werewolves, not encourage infighting among ourselves. All right, Julian said, finally giving in, but I don't have the same duty as you, and if they prove to be unworthy of your mercy, I'll wipe them out to the last of them. My duty is to protect my subjects and you, and I'll spare no one who threatens either. Lyra remained at the Red Moon Pack for a couple of weeks. She had been gone for much longer than she had anticipated, but the pack members had carried out their projects as allocated. During the time she remained at the pack, she successfully resettled the new rogues and supervised the ongoing projects. All the crucial facilities like the training center and school were running well, and for the most part, the pack was running like normally. A month after the Rogue King's fiasco ended, the royal wedding was held at the palace. Werewolves of all ranks from all around the kingdom were invited to attend the grand affair, and the capital city was bustling as a result. When the bonding ceremony ended, the cheers of thousands of guests rose to the sky as they welcomed the new royal couple. After the public event, the Lycan King and the newly crowned Luna Queen retreated back to the palace. There, the celebration continued in the banquet hall, where only select werewolves were invited. The newlyweds remained glued to each other throughout the night, as they received blessings and congratulations from the guests. It was loud and lively, but they were more aware of each other than of what was going on around them. It wasn't until the wee hours of the night that they were able to sneak out of the hall. The wedding celebrations were expected to continue for a few more days, and the guests seemed ready to party until dawn. As soon as the door of their new suite shut behind them, Lyra pushed Julian against the wall and kissed him. "The curse is gone," Julian muttered later, as they lay wrapped up in each other. "Can you tell?" Lyra asked. "There's a heaviness that I've always felt weighing on me that dissipated as soon as we completed our bonding ceremony," he told her. "I think that's when the curse's power vanished completely." "Good," Lyra said, snuggling closer to him. "Now all we have to do is make sure the witches don't catch us off guard again. I want to take you somewhere today," Julian told Lyra one morning a week after the wedding ceremony. The festivities had finally died down and most of the guests had gone back to their packs. "Where?" Lyra asked, smiling at him. They were lying in bed facing each other. "You'll know when we get there," he told her. Lyra narrowed her eyes slightly in suspicion, but said, "Okay." Julian chuckled. "No arguing. I trust you," she replied. He laughed and pressed his lips to her forehead. "I promise you'll like it." Later, after they had breakfast and got ready, Julian led Lyra to an all-terrain vehicle. They rode through the royal forest, going east to farther than Lyra had been before. Eventually, they arrived at a secluded timber cottage, hidden deep in the jungle. "I had no idea there were any houses out here," Lyra said, as she climbed down from the vehicle. "It looked like the perfect getaway spot." "It's only used by members of the royal family," Julian told her, getting down too and going to stand beside her. "Like a retreat spot, it's the ideal place to get away from the palace while still being nearby in case anything arises." Taking her hand, he led the way to the front door. He retrieved a key from his trouser pocket and unlocked the door. Inside, the cottage was warm and homely, nothing like the opulent palace. After taking her through a tour of the cottage, Julian led Lyra towards the back porch. There was a huge lawn extending towards the tree line, dotted with bushes of flowers and fruit trees. "Wow!" Lyra exclaimed, walking down the porch and onto the lawn. She walked towards one of the flower bushes and leaned down to sniff the flowers. "How could you keep such a nice place a secret from me? I've brought you here now, haven't I?" he asked, walking to her. He followed her and watched in amusement as she stopped to sniff every flower along the way. When they got to a fully bloomed apple tree, he took her hand and drew her to him. Then kissed her. Lyra wrapped her hands around his neck and leaned into him, deepening the kiss. Suddenly, the click of a camera shutter sounded through the serene atmosphere. Lyra pulled back and looked towards the direction the sound had come from. About 20 feet away stood a female with a camera raised to her face. "Who is that?" Lyra asked Julian, stunned at the sudden appearance. An unauthorized reporter would not have made it so far into the royal forest without getting caught. "Right? That was a great shot," the female said, walking towards them. "Good morning, Your Majesties. I'm Yuna, and I'll be your photographer for today." "Photographer?" Lyra asked, confused. "We are having a photo shoot today," Julian told her. "A photo shoot?" she echoed. "Like you said, this place is breathtaking," he said. "It would be a shame to not capture this moment." "My team is ready," Yuna said. "We can start as soon as you want." "We are good to go," Julian told her. "All right," she said. "Before we do your hair and makeup and start outfit changes, can I take a few more of you two in this garden? You can continue with your stroll and my assistant will help me with the lighting." "Sounds good," Julian said, taking Lyra's hand. "Whose idea was this?" Lyra asked Julian as they continued their walk while the photographer called for her assistant. "Mine," he said, looking proud. "Really?" she asked in disbelief. "Don't you like it?" he asked. "No, I love it," she said. "It's just very unlike you. You are the kind to arrange impromptu combat training camps, not photo shoots." "I'm both kinds now," he told her. "I'm no longer just the Lichen King. I'm also your mate. If something makes you happy, I'll gladly do it." Lyra couldn't help kissing him again after he said that. Compared with his attitude towards her when they first met, he was like a different person. After Yuna was satisfied with the shots she took in the garden, they headed inside the cottage to have their makeup and hair done. They had shots inside the cottage and some more in the garden and the forest surrounding the cottage. Their next destination was a nearby river. While the crew set up their equipment, Julian took Lyra's hand and led her behind a tree. He pressed her against the tree and leaned down to kiss her. "Found them!" An excited voice interrupted them. They sprang apart and watched as Beryl appeared from among the trees, followed by Zero and Anna. "What are you doing here?" Julian asked Beryl, his voice tinged with annoyance. "Are we interrupting?" Beryl asked, grinning. "Yes," Julian replied. "Ah," Beryl said, "not sorry at all." Spreading her arms, she shut her eyes and took a deep breath. "It's been a while since I've been here. The air is so fresh." "Is that a waterfall?" Anna asked, listening keenly. "Yes," Beryl said, dropping her arms and opening her eyes. "Come on, I'll show you." When the five of them got to the riverbank, the photographer was ready to resume the shoot. This time, all of them were included in the shoot. "Who knew His Majesty could be such a romantic?" Beryl asked after Lyra and Julian finished a session in front of the waterfall. "Love really does things to people?" "You are one to talk," Julian said. "Where did you leave Asher?" "The king disappeared from the palace. How could the beta leave too?" she asked. "Maybe you should have kept him company," Julian told her. "They've been like this since we were young," Zero whispered to Anna. After wrapping up the photo shoot, the group went back to the cottage. There, they found that the staff had prepared a hearty meal. "Would you like to come here for our wedding photo shoot?" Zero asked Anna, after everyone settled down and started eating. "Can we?" Anna asked, wide-eyed. "Of course," he told her. "We can go anywhere you like." "Wedding?" Lyra asked, looking from Anna to Zero and back. The two smiled and entwined their hands. "We are getting married," Zero announced. "Congratulations!" Lyra cheered, rising from her seat. Anna got up too and received Lyra's hug. "I'm so happy for you." "Thank you," Anna said. "I'm happy for you too," Beryl said, raising her glass of wine to them. "May you be happy and prosperous." "Have you spoken with your elders about this?" Julian asked Zero. He had no objection to their marriage, but he knew the Azure Pack elders would not be happy about it. "I've notified them that I've marked her," he said. When I'm done with my tasks here, I'll take Anna to my pack to introduce her to my family and start the wedding arrangements. That's great, Beryl said. You need to let them know you've made your choice and there's nothing they can do about it. Seeing Anna so happy and relaxed, Lyra felt relieved. After everything she had been through, she deserved every bit of happiness. Lyra was even more assured, because she knew that no matter what, Zero would protect Anna from his pack members. A week later, Julian accompanied Lyra to the Red Moon Pack. Julian could not help recalling the last time he had been at the pack for an inspection. His main objective back then had been seeking his mate. After not finding her in almost all the packs in the kingdom, his hopes had dwindled, and he had been prepared for more disappointment. He never would have thought that it would be the end of his search. As for Lyra, it still felt surreal going back to the pack as its leader. After all the suffering she had endured under Devon, she had sworn to take revenge on everyone who had made her life a living hell. But now, she found herself not only leading but also protecting them. Rather than focus on what happened in the past, she wanted to lead the pack into a new future. As Luna of the pack, she wanted to make sure that no member was mistreated or discriminated against because of their status. When they arrived at the pack, Beta Rick welcomed them. "Your Majesty, welcome to our pack," he greeted Julian, bowing deeply. "It's an honor." Julian glared at the male's head, feeling a deep urge to twist his neck and tear his head off. He remembered him from his last visit to the pack. He had tried to strike Lyra, and Julian had stopped him. Seeing the look on Julian's face, Lyra hooked her arm around his and tugged, making him look at her. She tilted her head, silently reminding him of their agreement. She had made him promise to treat everyone at the pack like his subjects and not his enemies. Whether it was the Red Moon members who had treated her harshly in the past or the rogues, he could not show any animosity towards them. Lyra wanted to cultivate a safe environment, where her pack members were not afraid that she or the Lycan King would turn on them one day, because of their past actions. "Fine," he told her through their mind link. "I won't cut him to pieces or skin him alive." Lyra gave him a smile, and then turned to Rick, whose body was practically bent in half from how deep his bow was. Lyra could sense he was scared. It looked as if nobody said anything for a while. He would get on his knees begging for the Lycan King to spare his life. "I'll give His Majesty a tour of the place," she told Rick. "You can go about with your tasks." "Yes, Your Majesty," he replied. Lyra took Julian to see some of the facilities around the pack, including the hospital, the school, and the main training center. At the training center, they stood on an observation deck on the first floor and watched pack members train below. Among them were some rogues, and they all trained well together. "Only you would be able to pull something like this," Julian said, amazed by the peaceful atmosphere maintained by two groups of werewolves who normally would be at each other's throats. "You have achieved something that countless kings and queens could not in centuries. I was only able to do it thanks to my wolf," Lyra said. She knew that it was not an easy task to get everyone to forget the pain and hate that had lasted for centuries and work together. The enmity had been so long-lasting. So establishing trust among the two groups would be almost impossible. Had it not been for her wolf's special capabilities that allowed her to soothe those around her and gain their trust, none of this would have happened. "No," Julian disagreed, shaking his head. "It's not only because of your wolf. If some were given the same power that you have, they might have used it for their benefit. Your wolf is powerful, but it's up to you how to use that power. You have a kind heart, so you are more concerned about how to bring everyone together without putting your personal interest first." Feeling flustered by the sudden compliments, Lyra said, "I think you might be a little biased." Julian reached for her hand and turned her to face him. "I'm not. Anyone who cannot see what an amazing person you are is either blind or mad that you are getting in the way of whatever schemes they had. I'm very lucky to have you by my side. I was a fool at first and did not realize it. Now, I'll do whatever I can to make sure nobody gets in your way." Lyra smiled and gave him a hug. Thank you for saying that. I'll do my best to do what's good for everyone. Being the wolf mother came with a lot of power, but a lot of responsibility too. Her decisions had the power to affect everyone in the kingdom, and she could not afford to forget about that for a second. Many thought allowing rogues into their community was a bad idea, so she had to make it work and show them that it was possible. She was grateful to have a supportive mate and friends by her side. When they made their way back to the mansion, Rick notified Lyra that they were holding a bonfire party that night to celebrate her return. Lyra confirmed that both she and Julian would attend. After spending a few days at the Red Moon Pack, Lyra and Julian went back to the palace. When they left, many pack members came to see them off. When Julian and Lyra left in the car, the members stood and waved until they were out of their sight. While the car made its way through the pack, other members came out of their homes to wave goodbye too. They all reminded her to not stay away for long, and Lyra wished she could spend more time at the pack. But it could not be helped. As the Luna Queen, the palace was her first home. She could spend some time at the pack, but she would always have to go back to the palace. "They'll be fine," Julian told her, reaching for her hand. She looked at him and nodded, smiling. "Yeah, I know." They had shown that despite the special constitution of the pack, they could go on without needing her supervision all the time. If anything happened that needed her attention, she would make her way to the pack right away. But other than that, she was confident that Rick and the others she had put in charge would have everything under control. When they arrived at the palace, preparations for Zero and Anna's wedding, which was taking place at the palace the next day, were underway. Zero and Anna's visit to the Azure Pack had elicited various opinions from the pack elders and members. But in the end, the date for the wedding had been set. They expected a lot of guests from all around the kingdom. The day of the wedding, Lyra went into the bridal dressing room just before the ceremony started. Anna was standing in front of the mirror, looking at her appearance. Lyra walked up to her and stood behind her, admiring her dress. It was a beautiful gown that had been worn by the past 3 generations of Lunas in the Azure Pack. Anna's tiara was a precious heirloom of the royal family, made of gold and adorned with blue sapphires. "You look gorgeous," Lyra told her. "Thank you," Anna said, looking a bit shy. "I still can't believe this is happening." "It is," Lyra told her. "Thank you for letting us have the wedding here," Anna said. "I never would have dreamt of something like this. It feels like I'm dreaming." "You deserve the best," Lyra told her. "It's your big day, so enjoy it." "Do you think everyone will be okay with it?" Anna asked. Lyra gently placed her hands on Anna's shoulders and met her gaze in the mirror. "Everyone, but what they think does not matter. You and Zero have accepted each other, and that's all that matters." Anna nodded and inhaled deeply. "You are right. I just don't want to be a burden to him. If people don't think he is a fit alpha because of me." "Stop! You are overthinking," Lyra told her. "First, I think with time, all those busybodies will learn to mind their own business. There's nothing they can do since Zero has made his choice, and they'll know better than to keep antagonizing you. Secondly, you are Zero's fated mate. Who but the goddess has a better judgment of who is a better fit for who?" "Thank you," Anna told her. "You always know how to put me at ease." "We have been through many similar situations," Lyra told her. "I know it's not easy to stop worrying when you're used to things never working out. But trust me, that's all behind you now. You have Zero and the rest of us around you, and we are on your side. The others should not matter." The door to the bridal room opened, and Beryl walked in. "Is the lady of the day ready? We are about to begin." "I'm ready," Anna said. Beryl handed her a bouquet of flowers. "Great, it's time. The music will start any time now, so you two should be ready to walk down the aisle." Lyra was escorting Anna down the aisle as her maid of honor. Julian was Zero's best man, and they would be waiting at the altar. The venue was the banquet hall, which had been prepared to suit the occasion. Anna took a step towards the door, but stumbled, swaying forward. Lyra quickly caught her and steadied her with an arm around her waist. "Are you okay?" "Yes," Anna said, but she stumbled with her next step too. Suddenly she felt too hot and suffocated, as if she was not getting enough air. She stopped trying to walk and focused on her breathing. "I think she needs to sit down," Beryl said. "No, I'm okay," she insisted. Lyra brought out a clean handkerchief and dabbed Anna's brow, where beads of sweat had appeared. "It's fine if you need more time. They can wait." At that moment, the sound of music reached them. "We can go," Anna said, smiling. "I'm just a little nervous." "Sure?" Lyra asked. "Yeah, okay. Let's go." Beryl opened the door, and the two walked out. They walked down a short hallway and through an alcove that opened into the start of the aisle. Everything went well as they made their way to the front. When they reached the altar, Lyra and Julian withdrew and left Anna and Zero standing in front of each other. The priestess officiating the ceremony took over, guiding the couple through the bonding ceremony. Finally, it was time for the kiss. Zero placed his hands on Anna's waist and leaned in to kiss her. At the touch of their lips, the entire hall got to their feet, applauding, joining the jubilation. Lyra felt reassured by the reception. There were some people who were against the marriage, but there were more people who were sincerely happy for the couple. While the guests cheered, Anna reached for her hair and withdrew her hairpin. Moving it between their bodies, she jabbed the pointy end of the pin against Zero's chest and pressed a small button on the other end. A sharp needle hidden in the pin pierced through Zero's shirt and into his chest. Zero gasped and let go of her, reaching for his chest. "Anna, what?" He trailed off as Anna took a step back. The hairpin was jutting from his chest, blood spreading on his white shirt. "Anna, what is this?" The cheers died down as the guests became aware of what had happened. Zero fell to his knees, gripping his chest as pain spread throughout his body. Lyra rushed to the altar at the same time as Julian, Beryl, and Asher. Anna stepped back, her hands trembling and her eyes wide with horror. "What have I just done?" she muttered, looking at her hands. "You witch!" someone screamed, jumping onto the altar and charging towards her. "I knew you were up to something!" Lyra jumped in front of Anna just in time to stop the male from attacking her. "Stop, Your Majesty! You saw what she did. Move away from her, she is dangerous." Lyra looked behind her at Anna, who looked hysterical. "I don't know why I did it. I don't know why I did it. I would never hurt him." Lyra believed her. The others not so much. "Kill her!" One of the elders from the Azure Pack yelled. "She is shameless enough to kill our Alpha in front of the king and the queen. I was right, she is a spy sent by the witches. Get away from her, Your Majesty." The entire hall erupted in chaos, with some escaping to safety while others approached the altar, all baying for Anna's blood. "Kill the witch." "How is Zero?" Lyra asked Julian. Beryl was checking his condition while Julian and Asher stood by. Royal guards had rushed forward to keep guests from joining the fray on the altar. "He is alive, but he needs immediate medical attention," he told her. "We are taking him to the infirmary." "Behead her!" a guest screamed, trying to get past the guards. "I've got this," Lyra told Julian when he looked at Anna behind her. "Take care of Zero and I'll deal with this." "Kill me!" Anna cried. "I've been bewitched. Someone is controlling me." Lyra turned to her and shook her head. "Number, I'll help you." Anna looked towards where Julian and Asher were lifting Zero onto a stretcher. "I almost killed him. I don't know what I'll do next." Her eyes lifted to Lyra, full of fear and tears running down her cheeks. "Just kill me. I don't want to hurt anyone else." "You won't," Lyra told her, taking a step towards her. "I won't let you." Anna stepped back, moving farther from her. Her eyes jumped around the altar, as if looking for something. Finally, Her gaze landed on a ceremonial sword resting on a stand. She turned and ran towards it. Lyra, seeing her intention, ran after her. Anna managed to pull the sword from its scabbard, but Lyra knocked it off before she could put the blade to her throat. Grabbing one of the decorative sashes on the altar, Lyra used it to bind Anna's hands behind her back. "I'll take her into custody and investigate the matter," Lyra informed the crowd that was watching, calling for Anna's executions. "What investigation?" Alpha Lucian wondered. "We all saw what happened with our own eyes. She killed the Azure Alpha. Alpha Zero is not dead," Lyra informed them. "She is a witch. Who knows what poison she used?" Lucian demanded. "He'll probably be dead before long. These witches strike to kill. Anna is not a witch," Lyra said firmly, "but a victim of one. We'll help her and find out who is really behind this. Leave it to us." Lyra ordered 2 guards to escort her to a private chamber accessed at the back of the altar. She instructed the other guards to escort the guests out of the hall. When she got into the chamber, the guards waited outside the door while she went inside with Anna. She sat Anna on a chair and sat down in front of her. Anna was no longer hysterical, and when she lifted her face, Lyra saw that the look in her eyes had changed. Slowly, a smile formed on her lips. "Finally, we meet," she said. "Luna Queen, who are you?" Lyra demanded. "Let Anna go." Anna tilted her head to the side. "Should I possess you instead?" "You can try," Lyra challenged her. "I like it where I am," she said. "What do you want?" Lyra asked. "What do you think I want?" she questioned back. Lyra leaned in. "Why don't you stop being a coward and face me yourself? Until when will you continue using others? Are you afraid that you won't make it out alive if you show your face?" Anior, rather the witch possessing her, broke into laughter. "You are so full of yourself. At least I don't hide in the dark like a cockroach afraid of the light. If you want this kingdom, come and take it yourself if you can. Stop forcing people to do your dirty work." "You are the one who is afraid," the witch said. "You don't know what I'll do next, or who I'll choose as my next host. It must give you sleepless nights." "The only thing that gives me sleepless nights is imagining all the ways I'm going to make you pay for everything you have done," Lyra told her. The witch scoffed. "We'll meet soon. Let's see if you can live up to your word." "I'll find you," Lyra threatened. "I'll find you and boil you in your own poisons." The witch laughed again. "Find me? How, where, when? You people have been hunting me for decades, and you still have no clue where to find me. Spare your threats for someone of your caliber. Today, I wanted to remind you that I'm still watching. Soon, I'll make my move. If you thought you won because you got rid of the Rogue King, you were wrong." "Is that so?" Lyra asked. "Who is going to be your next target? Whose body are you going to hijack next?" While asking the questions, Lyra used her telepathic powers to infiltrate Anna's mind. Since the witch had possessed her, there was a possibility that Lyra could track her down through Anna. If lucky, she could get into the witch's thoughts and even sense her location. She had a feeling that the witch was Valeria, the leader of the witches that Anna had talked about before. "You should be grateful that I'm using these puppets," the witch said. "If I showed you my true form, you would all tremble and wither in front of me." "Ah, yes," Lyra agreed sarcastically. "You are a most powerful witch, blessed with the powers of the heavens and the earth. That's why you hide from your enemies and would not dare face them yourself." "Soon, you'll see it for yourself," the witch said, her tone getting more animated. "All werewolves will bow in front of me and beg me to spare their lives. When that day comes, do not say I did not warn you. Soon." What did it mean? Lyra did not like the tone of confidence that the witch had. Was she expecting to gain some new kind of power? Or had she finished building her army of corrupted wolves and felt confident that she could overrun the kingdom with them? Maybe she had formulated a new deadly poison the likes of which had never been seen before. Lyra had thought that the Rogue King was the witch's biggest and most important ally. But even with him dead and most of the rogues having relocated to Lyra's pack, she was still making moves against the kingdom. Was she buffing, or was she hiding something that could put the kingdom in real danger? While probing Anna's mind, Lyra suddenly came across something foreign with a dark energy. She tried to latch onto it, but became distracted when Anna gasped in pain and fell from her seat. She started thrashing on the floor, then banged her head against the floor. Lyra reached for her and held her upper body against her own, stopping her from harming herself. "Let me die. Let me die," Anna mumbled over and over again. The dark energy that Lyra had felt disappeared, and Anna's body went still. The witch had let her go. Anna sagged against Lyra, tears streaming down her face. "Kill me, please," she pleaded. "It's the only way." "No," Lyra refused. "I'll find her and kill her so she can't do this to you ever again. Trust me, okay? Kill me. Just kill me," Anna mumbled before passing out. Lyra untied her hands and then carried her to the infirmary. Beryl appeared just as she lay Anna down on a bed. "How is she?" "She was possessed, and the witch was trying to make her kill herself," she told her. "She is okay now, but we need to keep a close eye on her. I almost found the witch through telepathy, and she must have fled when she sensed me. I don't think she'll try to attack Anna again." "How's Zero?" "The silver needle she used was poisoned," Beryl informed her. "Have you identified its antidote?" Lyra asked. The palace had a stock of antidotes for all the known witch poisons. As long as the victim got treated on time, they were able to save their life. Beryl shook his head. "We've identified the poison, but we don't have the antidote for it. It's a very rare poison made specifically for werewolves of the royal bloodline. We can make the antidote, but for that, we need a flower that only grows in the deadly swamp. It's a rare flower, so the chances of finding it are not good." The deadly swamp was located on the southern border of the werewolf kingdom. It was hard to venture into and home to many dangerous predators. Between the unnavigable muddy waters and the thick vegetation, it was near impossible to get around. That, combined with the fact that the flower was rare, made it seem like an impossible mission. "We have to find it," Julian said, joining them. "Zero's life depends on it, so we must find it." After leaving the infirmary, Julian and Lyra instructed staff around the palace to ensure all the guests were catered to, leaving Asher in supervision. They also ensured that security was beefed up around the palace and the capital city in case the witches attempted another attack. Lyra was worried that it might be too late by the time they got to the swamp, found the flower, and brought it back to Beryl and Spencer to make the antidote. The two healers could keep Zero alive with their healing powers, but the poison was powerful and would kill him if not stopped soon. "We are taking the jet, right?" Lyra asked Julian as they got ready in the weapon room, grabbing basic items that would come in handy in the swamp. "No," Julian said. "If we drive, we'll never get back in time," she said. "We are not driving," he told her. "Come, I'll show you something." Moving to one end of the room, he pressed his palm to a panel on the wall next to a door labeled "Restricted Access." The door opened, and they walked into a narrow corridor. At the end of the corridor was another door, which Julian opened with a password. The room was empty in the middle, with a few storage cabinets on the sides. A pentagram was drawn on the empty floor in the middle. "What's this?" Lyra asked, wondering what something she saw in books on witchcraft was doing in the royal palace. She knew that the drawing was used by witches when casting spells and carrying out other witchcraft practices. Witchcraft was forbidden in the werewolf kingdom. So why was this in the palace? Julian opened a cabinet and retrieved 5 candles and a lighter. As he placed the candles on the points, he explained, "The witches have always been hard to get rid of because of their superior magic abilities. We banned witchcraft to protect ourselves. But we could not deny that it might be the best way to counter the witches. Select members of the royal family are taught magic skills using witchcraft that can come in handy when push comes to shove. Today, we are going to use a transportation spell to get to the deadly swamp. After placing the candles on all 5 points, he held out his hand to Lyra. She took it, and he led her to stand in the middle of the drawing. "Close your eyes, this might get a little dizzy." Lyra closed her eyes. Julian chanted a few unintelligible phrases, and suddenly there was a strong wind blowing in the room. Lyra felt as if her body was spinning with the wind, and she could no longer feel the floor beneath her. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. "You can open your eyes now," Julian told her. When Lyra opened her eyes, they were no longer in the secret room. Right in front of them was a swamp, stretching out as far as their eyes could see. "Wow," she muttered. Looking at Julian, "This is unbelievable. Now, I just need to use another spell to locate the flower," he said. "It's said that the flower has magical qualities, so I should be able to sense it. As long as I can locate it, it'll make our work easier." Lyra was relieved to find out that the mission wasn't going to be as difficult as she had thought. However, her relief did not last long when Julian informed her that he could not use his magical powers. "We have to look for it ourselves then," she said, moving towards the edge of the swamp. Julian reached for her hand and stopped her. "We can't just go in. It's dangerous. How else can we find it, then? If we don't find it soon, Zero will die. I thought I could use magic to locate it, so I did not bring any equipment that could help. We may have to wait for a team to arrive with drones to help us. If we ask for help from the neighboring southern packs, we won't wait for too long." Julian tried to make a call, but there was no reception. When both of them tried using MindLink, it turned out not only their magic abilities, but also their werewolf abilities were unable to work. "We have to go in," Lyra said. "It's the only way." They had already saved hours by using the transportation spell. They could use those hours to look for the flower. "Looking for this?" a feminine voice asked. Coming from behind them, Julian and Lyra turned and found a female in a flowy blue dress standing behind them. In her hand, she was holding a flower, identical to the one they were looking for. "Who are you?" Lyra demanded. "The one who can determine whether Alpha Zero lives or dies," she said. "This flower only blooms once a year, so you are lucky that you came at the right time. The question, however, is whether you are going to get it in time. What do you want in exchange for it?" Julian asked. "I can give you anything." "Anything?" the female asked, smiling. "Even your kingdom." "We don't have time to waste," Julian told her. "Do you want money?" "It's her," Lyra told him. "Valeria, the leader of the witches." She looked at the female. "Am I right? I said we'd meet soon, didn't I?" The female said. Lifting her hand, she hurled the flower over the swamp. Using her magic, she used wind to carry it farther. "I thought I should give you a gift. Can you get it?" Lyra charged towards her, but the witch vanished into thin air. "Damn it!" she cursed, looking towards the direction Valeria had thrown the flower. "I'll get it," Julian said. "It's much better now that we know where to find it." "No, I'll go," Lyra told him. "I'm lighter on my feet, so I'll be able to use the vegetation to get along better than you would." Julian did not want to send her into the swamp alone. But she was right. One could only get through the swamp by using the vegetation, and her lighter weight was more suitable for that. About 10 minutes after getting into the swamp, Lyra caught sight of the flower. Even though it did not seem too far, it took her another half-hour to get it. Finally, however, she was able to pluck it and show it to Julian. "I've got it," she called in excitement. "Zero could be saved." Julian had an alarmed look on his face, and for a second Lyra wondered why he looked scared. Before she could ask, she felt a tight pressure around her neck, and then, suddenly, she found herself staring at a snake's face. The snake had coiled itself around her neck and was getting ready to strike. The snake had appeared out of nowhere and wrapped itself around Lyra so fast that Julian did not get a chance to warn her. It was long and thick, and its body was coiled around Lyra's upper body and neck, its head poised to strike. Julian's heart froze in fear as the gravity of the situation registered. Both of them could not use their magic or werewolf abilities. From the size and appearance of the snake, he could tell it was not a normal one. It must be a magical beast. Magical beasts normally had their own territories and attacked anyone who trespassed. However, Julian had never heard that the deadly swamp was territory to any magical beast. The snake had only appeared after Lyra plucked out the flower, so it was more likely that the beast was guarding the flower. Not the swamp. "Throw away the flower," he yelled at Lyra. "It's guarding the flower. As long as you have it, it won't let you go." Lyra did not want to let go of the flower, but she was aware that she could not afford to hesitate. Now, it made sense why Valeria had thrown the flower into the swamp. She had never intended on letting them get the antidote to treat Zero. She had known about the magical beast, and she knew the beast would kill whoever took the flower. Using all her strength, Lyra threw the flower towards the land. Immediately, the snake uncoiled itself from her and slithered towards the flower. Lyra held her neck where the snake had stung her. "Are you okay? Did it sting you?" Julian called out to her. "Yes, but I feel okay," she told him. Looking at the snake that had coiled itself around the flower, she said, "We have to get the flower." Julian agreed. Magical beast or not, Zero's life depended on that flower. They could not leave without it. Brandishing his dagger, Julian ventured into the swamp. "Between the two of us, we should be able to distract it. Grab the flower when I draw it away." Lyra reached for her own dagger and nodded. Without their powers, they had to rely on their weapons and reflexes to beat the snake. As they approached from two different sides, the snake raised its head, ready to strike. When they got close enough, Julian acted more aggressively. Attracting the snake's attention, he swung the arm holding the dagger, and the snake uncoiled its body and struck at him. As soon as the snake uncurled its body, Lyra grabbed it by its tail. Using its momentum, she swung it in a circle and threw it far into the swamp. She grabbed the flower, and the two of them began the race out of the swamp. Behind them, the snake dived into the water and swam towards them. While they struggled to wade through the murk, the snake was lightning fast. Just before they got out of the swamp, it caught up with Lyra. Lyra flung the flower in her hand towards land, where it landed on dry ground. In the blink of an eye, the snake had its body coiled around her body again. Acting fast, Julian sliced along its body, creating a huge gash. Suddenly weakened, the snake fell off Lyra. They managed a few more steps before the snake resumed its chase. Lyra used her dagger, aiming for the snake's heart. The snake went limp and fell into the water, its body sinking like stone. Lyra and Julian successfully made it to land. While Lyra was concerned about the flower, Julian was more worried about her. "Let me see," he said, examining where the snake had stung her. He could see the bite marks, but surprisingly, there was no swelling or discoloration around the wound. "Do you feel dizzy, lightheaded?" Lyra shook her head. "No, I'm fine." Julian was not sure whether to be relieved at the lack of a sign of poisoning or to be worried. After all, the snake was a magical beast. There was a possibility that its poison did not work like that of normal snakes. To be safe, he used his mouth to suck out blood from the wound. "Maybe the venom is not working on me because of my wolf's physiology," Lyra told him. Even though she could not use her abilities at the moment, her body still had the special qualities of the mother wolf. "We still need to be safe," Julian told her. "If you feel anything strange, tell me right away." "I will," she promised, guessing that Valeria had put a spell around the swamp to keep them from using their abilities. They walked north while trying to use the transportation spell. After walking about a mile from the swamp, they were able to use the spell and get back to the palace. As soon as Julian and Lyra got back to the palace, Beryl and Spencer took the flower and started making the antidote. They had been gone less than an hour, but Zero's condition had worsened. Even with Beryl and Spencer's help, he would not have been able to hold on much longer without the antidote. As for Anna, she was still unconscious, but there were no signs that she was in danger. There also hadn't been any other incidents in the palace. When Beryl administered the antidote to Zero, his condition started improving right away. As soon as he woke up, he looked around for Anna. When he did not see her, fear washed over him. Before losing consciousness, he had heard people calling for her execution. "Where is Anna?" he asked Beryl, getting down from the hospital bed. "Is she okay? It was not her fault. She is not working for the witches." "We know," Beryl told him. "The witch possessed her and made her do it. She is fine now, but she passed out and is in recovery. Don't worry, she is safe. No one is going to hurt her." "Where is she? I want to see her," Zero said, heading for the door. His own condition was not entirely stable yet, but Beryl knew it would be useless trying to stop him. Going after him, she led him to the room where Anna was. Anna was still asleep, but she was turning her head restlessly and mumbling incoherently. Stuck in a nightmare. Zero grabbed a towel on the table and used it to dab sweat off her brow. "I'm here," he said to her, reaching for her hand. "It'll be okay." When Anna stabbed him, he was shocked at first. But when the situation registered, he knew she had not done it willingly. Knowing that she was in the grip of the witch, he had wanted to protect her. But he had a poisoned silver needle in his chest, and he could barely form words as people pointed fingers at her and accused her of killing him. He knew how relieved she was to finally be out of the witch's control. He had promised her that after they got married, they would live happily in his pack and no one would hurt her ever again. And yet, on the day that was supposed to be a beautiful memory for them, this happened. Zero had wanted to catch the witch before, but now he wanted it with a burning need. He would not rest until he found her and made her pay for everything she had done to Anna. She had gotten away for so long, but not anymore. As long as she was out there, Anna would not be safe, and Zero could not have that. Zero climbed on the bed and held Anna closely, whispering soothing words to her. A short while later, she stopped tossing and mumbling. After making sure that she was sleeping peacefully, he left the room and went to look for the others. "Are you feeling all right?" Julian asked, when Zero showed up to the meeting room and took a seat. After getting back and delivering the antidote, they had immediately started a security meeting to strategize on how to ambush the witch's hideout. "I'm fine," Zero said. "What do we know about her?" "We can roughly estimate her hideout from the information that Anna gave us," Lyra informed him. "We might not know the exact location, but it's in the southern jungle. There are only a few small packs located down there, so it was easier for her to establish her base without notice. Also, most of the jungle is largely unventured by our kind because of its ominous and dangerous nature. I don't care if she is protected by a river of hellfire," Zero said. "We are flushing her out this time. I suspect that she is up to something huge, so we need to be extra careful," Lyra said. "But yes, this time we are not stopping at anything. She is coming at us with all she got, so we'll do the same for her. We have notified every pack about our mission, and they're sending us their best warriors. We'll not get out of that forest without killing her and destroying everything she has been working on for years." While the others pored over the map of the southern part of the kingdom, Beryl asked Lyra to have a word outside the room. "Do you find it odd that of all the people she could have possessed at the wedding, she chose Anna?" Beryl asked. "Anna was the bride, and she wanted to attack the royal family," Lyra deduced. "It was the perfect way to create chaos." "Yes, but there were other people she could have possessed to create even bigger chaos," like you or Julian. But she didn't. Lyra tilted her head thoughtfully. She said that this was just a warning. I think that's an excuse, Beryl said. I think she cannot possess you or Julian. She possessed Devon. But with Julian she had to make the Rogue King steal his appearance. Even when you were at the swamp, she did not directly attack you. I've been learning about the Mother Wolf recently. And I think it's because of your blood. My blood? Lyra asked, frowning. Beryl nodded. Yes. The Mother Wolf's blood has special qualities that give you superior abilities against all kinds of threats that are weaknesses for regular werewolves. I was wondering if we can use your blood to create serums to bolster our soldiers' defense against magical attacks. If you think it'll work, then yes, Lyra said. She remembered the bite from the snake at the swamp. Had she been right about her wolf's blood protecting her? Even though her abilities could be blocked through spells, did it mean she was protected against magical attacks? Thank you, Beryl thanked her, giving her a hug. You are the best. No, this is my duty, Lyra said. I'll give as much as you need. The next few days were spent collecting information, arranging and training teams, and creating a strategy. The healers were busy creating serums and various antidotes which would be brought to the battlefield for instant use when needed. Finally, the day of the ambush came. Everybody knew their mission by heart: to catch and kill the witch no matter what it took. It had been many years of going round in circles, but now they were going to put an end to it. The southern jungle covered hundreds of thousands of hectares, providing a good hiding place for rogues. However, even rogues did not venture into the deepest parts of the forest since they were considered too dangerous. The forest was rumored to not only be the witch's hideout, but to also contain all sorts of magical beasts. While some of the southern packs had led expeditions into the jungle while dealing with rogues, they did not have enough information that could be used to accurately map out the witch's lair. After hours of walking in the jungle, Lyra finally sensed magical power. Leading the way, she guided the troops deeper into the forest. The farther they got, the more ominous it became. The magical power also got stronger, and everybody could feel it. After close to an hour, they spied a castle through the trees. It was big and old, its walls almost entirely covered by vines. This is it, Lyra informed everybody through MindLink. I felt Valeria's energy before, and I can feel traces of it around this place. Someone in the back stepped on something, and the sound of something crushing carried through the forest. Looking down, he found that he had stepped on a human skull. Looking around, they realized there were more skulls scattered on the ground. Some were weathered and covered by undergrowth, while others seemed to have been dumped recently. Lyra wondered whether they belonged to the victims of Valeria's experiments. Looking at some of them, she realized they must belong to children. She remembered the mother at her pack, who had been worried that the Rogue King would take her young son away. Had Niall been delivering them to Valeria for use in the experiments? Be careful, she instructed through the MindLink. There could be traps around this place. Watch your every step. The closer they got to the castle, the foggier it got, significantly reducing the visibility. The air filled with shrieks, bird cries, and all sorts of animal sounds. Some of the animal sounds coming from the direction of the castle were filled with pain, as if the animal was in deep agony. Could she be using magical beasts for her experiments? Beryl asked through the MindLink. Only an animal in pain would sound like that. It seems like it. Zero replied. We thought she was only using rogues, but it turns out she has another source. Throughout history, magical beasts had been controlled by magic users and used in battles. But no one had created an entire army of them. Not only that, but tried to fashion them into some kind of monster. Corrupted werewolves were extremely dangerous and hard to deal with. Lyra did not want to imagine how much bigger of a threat corrupted magical beasts would be. She was certain that this was what Valeria had been alluding to when she bragged to Lyra while possessing Anna. It does not matter, Lyra told them through MindLink. Even if she can control magical beasts, there's a limit to how many she can use. There are not as many magical beasts as there are rogues, not to mention it's harder to capture and control them. With the rogue king dead, and many rogues coming to our kingdom, she must be facing setbacks. This is the right time to flush her out, before she finds a way to make up for the lost manpower, Julian said. Their slow and silent approach towards the castle was halted by a sudden noise in the forest. Everybody stood on alert and listened as the rustling sound got closer. The noise shifted from one direction to the other, making it hard for them to tell from which direction the animal was coming from. Suddenly, the warriors at the back of the formation shouted. Lyra turned and saw a long silvery serpent maneuver on the ground, striking warriors with its body and tail as it moved. She unhooked one of her throwing stars and threw it, aiming for the serpent's head. The serpent fell to the ground with a thud that shook the earth around. A silvery mist, its life force, escaped through the gash on its head. It was a magical beast. Before they could access the situation anymore, one of the scouts who had gone ahead relayed back information that the compound surrounding the castle was teeming with magical beasts. Seeing that the serpent had attacked, it was a given that more of them would. Rather than wait for them in the dark forest, Lyra wanted to face them in the open grounds around the castle. Instructing everyone to keep their weapons ready, they left the cover of the forest and emerged at the castle. Like the scout had said, magical beasts roamed the compound. The only thing separating the two groups was a magical barrier surrounding the castle. Using the tip of her dagger, Lyra pricked her fingertip. When blood pooled at the tip, she pressed it to the barrier. During her research while making the serums, Beryl had read somewhere that the wolf mother's blood could be used to break magical barriers. It turned out to be true, as the barrier between them and the beasts dissipated the moment Lyra touched it with her blood. As soon as the barrier was down, the beasts rushed towards them. There were all sorts of beasts, from winged creatures that were as big as horses and serpents with multiple heads. Among the beasts were also corrupted wolves. The division of the troop that had been assigned archery roles released a multitude of arrows, raining them down on the beasts. The arrows were created with special magical metal tips doused in poison, allowing them to deal critical damage to magical creatures with a single hit. The second division of the troop shifted into their wolf forms and met the beasts head-on. When it was no longer possible to use arrows, the first division switched to other weapons, including guns loaded with enchanted bullets and daggers. While the warriors engaged the beasts, Lyra and Julian made their way towards the castle. They did not want to give Valeria a chance to run away while everyone was fighting outside. As soon as they walked through the front door, they were met by a group of witches who hurled magic attacks at them. The two evaded all the attacks as they streaked towards the witches, their weapons drawn. Within minutes, they had defeated all of them and ventured deeper into the castle. They split up, with Lyra going into the east wing and Julian going west. During her search, Lyra found herself in a huge laboratory. Walls on one side of the room were covered by shelves filled with jars, filled with all sorts of liquids, bones, and plants. Other shelves held books. On the other side were cages holding various types of animals, from rats to snakes. A huge fridge in the room contained cases and cases of test tubes containing different colored liquids. Lyra guessed that they may be poisons. Hearing noise beyond a door in the far wall, Lyra moved towards it. Turning the handle, the door gave way. Stepping in, the first thing she noticed were the huge cages. While those in the outer room held small animals, these ones held huge magical beasts. Some of them were lying lifelessly on the ground, while others paced the cages in agitation. The second thing she noticed were the bodies. They were lying on raised metal slabs. 10 of them. Lyra's heart sank as she took a closer look. They were all dead, and each body was twisted in one way or the other. Also, they were all werewolves. What horrified her the most was how young most of them looked. Once again, she thought about the mother at the Red Moon Pack. She had said that her son died in battle, but now Lyra wondered whether that was the case. Had Niall sent young werewolves to battle, or had he given them to Valeria to be used for her experiments? Looking around, she did not find traces of any werewolves who were still alive. Feeling sick to her stomach, she left the lab. She searched every room she came across, bursting down the doors that were locked. When she knocked down the door of the room at the very end, she found herself facing a group of terrified faces. A group of about 10 werewolves huddled together in one corner, holding on to each other. None of them looked any older than 20. "It's okay," she told them, using her wolf's inner voice to calm them. "I'm here to save you. Are there others?" One of the boys stepped forward. "They take one of us once in a while. We don't know where they take them. But they never come back." Lyra nodded, her mind flashing with the images of the werewolves lying dead in the lab. If they had attacked Valeria earlier, how many would they have saved? "I'll take you to a different room," she told them. "Stay there until I come to get you. There's fighting outside, so it's not safe. Don't go anywhere, do you understand?" The group agreed, and Lyra led them to one of the empty rooms she had come across during her search. She chose 3 of them to stand on guard and gave them weapons before leaving. Just as she left the room, she got a mind link from Julian, telling her that he had found Valeria in the basement. Following Julian's scent, Lyra found the basement a few minutes later. It was a dank round room solely illuminated by candles. As soon as Lyra walked into the room, she was welcomed by the sound of clapping. Looking up, she saw Valeria standing on a raised altar in the middle of the room. She was the one clapping, a huge smirk on her lips. "We are all here," Valeria said. "Perfect." After having her plans thwarted so many times, Valeria had been scrambling to find a way to get rid of the Lichen King and the Luna Queen. She had not expected that the Rogue King would be such a useless ally. Even after she had helped him steal the Lichen King's identity and made him powerful talismans, he had failed. As if that wasn't bad enough, all her latest experiments failed. After finding out that the Lichen Kingdom had made significant steps in finding a weapon that could easily eliminate corrupted wolves, she had tried to make them stronger. She had succeeded in making stronger, faster, and more resilient wolves, but they died right afterwards. So she had started capturing magical beasts, but she could not find nearly enough to attack the werewolf kingdom with. But a few days ago, she found an ancient magical artifact. The artifact was the most potent source of dark magic on Earth, and anyone who wielded it would be invincible. However, there was one problem. The artifact had been sealed by a wolf mother many centuries ago. To unseal it, Valeria needed the blood of a wolf mother. Once she unsealed the artifact, she would be the most powerful magic user in the world, and there would be nothing the werewolf kingdom could do to protect itself from her. When she found out that the Lichen King was planning a mission to look for her hideout, she made it easy for them to find her. She had left traces of her energy in the jungle, knowing that Lyra would recognize it. Like she had planned, finally they had come to her. Now all she needed was the blood of the wolf mother. "I was wondering when you'd pay me a visit," she said, taking a few steps down from the altar. The artifact, which was in the form of a lamp, sat on the altar. "I thought I'd have to come to you, but you found your way." "We are not here to chat," Lyra snapped, exchanging a look with Julian. "This is where everything ends." Julian gave her a subtle nod. "Be careful," Ray told her. "There's something ominous about the lamp on the altar." "Everything in this place is ominous," Lyra said. "No, this is different," Ray told her. "I think it is a magic artifact. It seems to be sealed, but I can sense dark energy from it." Lyra frowned as she eyed the lamp. Now that she thought about it, Valeria was acting suspiciously. While a fierce battle had been going on outside, with her magical beasts and witches being slaughtered one after the other, she had not shown up to assist them. Instead, she remained in the basement, as if waiting for something. Had she been waiting for her? And Julian, for someone who was stuck in the same room as the Lichen King and the Wolf Mother. She did not appear to be in distress. Lyra had thought that Valeria's magical beasts were her ultimate weapon. Now, she realized maybe they weren't. I recognize the lamp, Julian informed her through their mind link. It's the Black Lantern. It's an artifact that's used to source dark power from the netherworld and channel it to its user. A witch found it many centuries ago and used it to create chaos all over the world, not just among werewolves. Fortunately, a wolf mother appeared at the time and sealed it. Since then, the lantern disappeared. Dark power from the netherworld, Lyra asked. That's something that should not be on this earth. You are right, Julian agreed. It's so ominous that its use is forbidden even among witch covens. If the user loses control, it can cause indiscriminate destruction. Nobody is safe around it. Do you think she can control it? Lyra asked. Let's not find out, he said. Deciding to attack together, Julian and Lyra ran towards the altar. While they were midway, Valeria waved her hand, sending a wave of energy their way. They braced themselves, but it turned out to be nothing like the attacks they had faced from the other witches. The energy was so forceful that it knocked them off their feet and sent them flying backwards before they crashed into the floor. As they collected themselves from the floor, Valeria's laugh filled the room. Did you think you could come here and do whatever you wanted? Prepare for your death. Just when they had gotten back on their feet, she hit them with another blast of energy. This time, they both crashed into the wall before falling to the ground. How is she so strong? Lyra asked Julian through their mind link. It was impressive that she could knock both of them around like that at the same time. She is too powerful, Julian replied. We can't let her wear us out. I'll go all in, and when she is distracted with me, you should attack. Got it, Lyra said, standing with one hand braced on the wall, feigning weakness. Julian shifted into his wolf form and sprang towards Valeria. Valeria used the same tactic, throwing a ball of energy at him. This time, however, it did not stop him. His wolf maintained momentum against the force and eventually crashed into her. As they came to the floor together, Valeria rolled away quickly. Just before she got out of his range, he clamped his fangs down on her ankle. Valeria unsheathed the dagger from a thigh strap and stabbed his shoulder. Julian released her, and she kicked him off the altar. Julian! Lyra screamed, running towards him. Valeria had stabbed him in the juncture of his shoulder and neck, and blood was pooling on the floor. He shifted back to his human form, revealing the extent of the wound. When Lyra reached him, she saw that the skin around the wound had already turned black, due to poisoning. Give me the antidote, she yelled at Valeria, who stood at the altar watching the scene with a smirk. There's no antidote, Valeria said. He is as good as dead. There's an antidote for everything, Lyra argued, getting to her feet and walking towards Valeria. Not for this, Valeria told her. After everything, do you think I'd give either of you a way out? You were right about one thing. This is where everything ends for you. Clenching her dagger tightly, Lyra jumped towards her. But, rather than meet her attack, Valeria vanished in the same manner she had done at the swamp. Before Lyra could locate her new position, a cage dropped from above and trapped her. This is much easier than I anticipated, Valeria bragged. Relax, it'll be over soon. Lyra grabbed the metal bars of the cage and glared at her. Let me out of here, and let's see how that goes. Valeria shook her head. No, I need you to stay where you are for a little longer. Flinging her wrist, she sent a flurry of needles flying towards the cage. Lyra barely had any space to move and could not knock them down. They sunk into her skin through her clothes, with a few ending up on her wrists and neck. Lyra reached for them and plucked them out. They were painless, and she did not see any signs of poisoning. She thought that must be because of her wolf when she saw a red thread emerge from one of the places she had been pricked. As she watched, more red threads emerged from her body. Looking closer, she realized it was her blood. It left her body like a thread being pulled out. From all the areas the needles had pricked her, the threads glided through the air and out of the cage, flowing towards the lamp on the altar. The blood flowed into the lamp through its spout. After a while, the lamp ignited with a reddish glow. "Yes!" Valeria cried, her eyes wide with glee as she looked at the lamp. "It's working finally. They are all going to bow down before me." "Are you crazy?" Lyra screamed. "That's forbidden magic, even for an evil witch like you." "Forbidden?" Valeria demanded. "It's only forbidden to those who cannot wield it. Only those who are too weak are afraid of its power." The reddish glow turned into a whirlwind surrounding the lamp and quickly grew bigger. Valeria stepped towards the lamp, chanting. Lyra could not do anything but send messages to the others outside to come to the basement and help. She worried that it would be too late by the time they got there and that they would only walk into their deaths. But what option did they have? If Valeria successfully gained the power of the Black Lantern, she would be invincible. She would kill them anyway, then she would spread havoc throughout the kingdom and beyond. This was their only chance to stop her. The whirlwind disappeared into Valeria's body through her chest. She spread her arms and screamed as the lamp's energy entered her. Finally, balls of energy appeared in her hands. "You don't know what you are doing," Lyra yelled. "You'll regret this." "Regret?" Valeria turned to her, a maniacal smile on her face. "You'll be dead. What does it matter to you?" "Master, master," a witch screamed, running into the room. "They have infiltrated the castle." Valeria turned to her. "Let them come. This will be their graveyard." The witch's stricken face got paler as she looked at Valeria. Master, you're..." "What?" Valeria snapped. "Your eyes. There's something coming out of them," she said. That's when Valeria became aware of the red mist flowing from her eyes. "What the hell is this?" "You are not strong enough to handle that kind of power," Lyra told her. "Shut up!" Valeria screamed. "Let me out and I'll help you," Lyra told her. "Otherwise, it'll kill you." "Do you think I'm stupid?" Valeria screamed. Her eyes were bulging and the red mist was now accompanied by blood. "You'll die first." She threw a ball of energy towards the cage. While the attack was aimed at Lyra, it created an energy wave that rippled all around the room. Everything went flying, starting with the cage that shattered into pieces, Lyra, the witch at the entrance, and Julian. "I'll kill all of you," Valeria screamed in a deranged voice. "All of you." When Lyra opened her eyes, the room was covered in a red haze. She located Valeria by her voice, and what she saw sent chills down her spine. Valeria was clawing at her face, her nails digging into skin and flesh. Blood streamed from her face, her eyes, her nose, and her mouth. She kept screaming, "I'll kill you," over and over again, as if consumed by her hate and anger and unaware of what was happening to her. Suddenly, she went quiet and her body slumped to the ground. Lyra watched in silence for a while, but she made no movement. Getting up, Lyra went to her and confirmed that she was dead. She could not contain the power of the Black Lantern, and it destroyed her. The lamp itself lost its glow, and the haze in the room cleared. After ensuring Valeria was dead, she made her way to Julian. He was unconscious, and the poison had spread throughout his torso. "It's all right," Ray said, as panic gripped Lyra. "Our bond can heal him, but this time you must share your life force with him." Her life force. She was willing to give up her life if it saved him. Many days later, Lyra woke up in the palace. Julian was lying next to her, sleeping peacefully. She smiled as she looked at him, a warm feeling blooming in her chest. She fought the urge to touch his face, afraid to wake him. However, when she turned to leave the bed, his arm shot out and hooked around her waist. "Don't go," he murmured sleepily. Lyra's smile widened in amusement as she looked back at him. "You are awake?" He shook his head. his eyes still closed. Number. She laughed and tapped his hand. Get up, Your Majesty, she teased. We have a kingdom to run. He tightened his hold around her, pulling her to him. They can survive a few hours without us. It's not like an evil witch is going to fly in and blast us all to hell. Haha, Lyra laughed dryly. I'm glad you can joke about that. Julian opened his eyes and smiled. Me too. They both burst laughing, with Lyra falling back to his side. Julian reached for her face and kissed her. Lyra kissed him back. Getting lost in the moment, when his hand wandered to her chest, she pulled back. We really have to go, she told him. Remember, Zero and Anna are going back to the Azure Pact today. We have to see them off. Do we? Julian asked, pressing his lips to her neck. Yes, Lyra replied, pushing him away and getting out of bed. Stop being so naughty. Julian Fake gasped. I don't think anyone has ever accused me of being naughty before. They were probably busy kissing your ass so you wouldn't behead them, she replied. What? Am not a bad king. I didn't say you are. I don't behead people for fun. No, you don't. She called over her shoulder as she made her way to the bathroom. Lyra, he protested, getting out of bed. Let us settle this right now. Tend. By the time they made it out of their room, it was well after breakfast and Zero and Anna were ready to leave. Anna had long recovered from Valeria's possession, and both of them were in good health and high spirits. After the showdown with Valeria, the palace had made Anna's contribution to finding the witch public. This had dispelled the rumors that accused her of working for the witches. Now, rather than point fingers at her, people were curious as to how she had survived living with the witches. The Azure elders who were against her marriage to Zero now puffed up their chests, bragging about how their Luna had played a huge role in defeating the biggest enemy of their kind. I'll miss you so much, Anna told Lyra, as they hugged outside near the car waiting to leave for the Azure Pack. You're welcome to stay here any time, Lyra told her. Also, we'll see each other often during official events. I'm looking forward to that, Anna said. Besides, Lyra said, looking at Julian after they pulled apart. Sumana said he'd introduce bonfire parties at the palace, so look forward to those too. Julian met her gaze and smirked, recognizing the challenge and accepting it. A month later, the first bonfire party was held at the palace. Many werewolves were invited from all over the kingdom. Unlike the elegant balls often held at the palace, this event was laid back and lively. So you were really serious about holding these parties, Lyra said to Julian as they watched their guests mingle. Of course I was, he claimed passionately. I don't want my mate running off to her pack every time she feels like having fun. I won't argue with that, she teased. The palace can be quite a bore. We can live in your pack if you want, he said. She poked his stomach with her finger. I'm kidding. I like it here, really. Werewolves milled around them chatting, laughing, dancing, with no care in the world. With no security issues pressing over the kingdom, everybody could relax. There had been no case of conflicts with rogues for a couple of months now. The programs that had been established to reintroduce rogues to society had been hugely successful. With the palace's efforts, more and more packs were willing to accept rogues into their communities, and the stigma against them had reduced significantly. After the battle with Valeria, Lyra had successfully sealed the Black Lantern. It could not be destroyed, so they hid it in a secret chamber at the palace. As long as it remained untouched, it posed no danger. Lyra and Julian parted at some point, with Lyra hanging out with Beryl and Anna. Beryl was staying at the palace with Asher, but it was the first time both of them were seeing Anna since she left for the Azure Pack. They chatted for hours, enjoying each other's company and observing the party. Occasionally, they dipped into the action, dancing their hearts out. I thought you had forgotten about me, Julian said when Lyra finally made her way back to him. I'd never, she said, placing a hand on his chest. She had drunk a lot, and she was a bit tipsy. He covered her hand with his. Is that so? She nodded and rose on her toes to kiss him. Yes. Julian held her close and deepened the kiss. After a few seconds, he lifted her in his arms with her legs hooked around his waist and carried her towards a nearby building. Going around it, he pressed her against the wall, hidden from the party. I need you, he groaned. Julian's worried voice came across the phone when Lyra received his call. I'm on my way, Lyra told him. I'll be back soon. If you run into any problem, tell me, he told her. I know how Alpha Lucian can be. If he is giving you a hard time, I'll teach him a lesson. Don't worry, I can handle Lucian by myself, she told him. I've settled everything, and I'll be at the palace soon. Okay. I'm waiting for you, he told her. Lyra hung up with a smile. Earlier, she had left on a trip to the Luminous Pack for the grand opening of a werewolf academy that would welcome students from all over the kingdom. Julian had been worried that Alpha Lucian would give her a hard time and wanted to go with her, but he had other official duties to attend to. Even though no werewolf in the kingdom could stand up to her, his first instinct was to protect her, whether from mortal danger or rude alphas. He really has no idea, does he? Anna asked. Lyra shook her head. Nope, I thought males could sense this sort of thing. Anna said. They can. He just hasn't figured out what's going on. He has always been clueless like that. Beryl chipped in. I think we are done now, Anna said. We'll leave you to it. After Beryl and Anna left, Lyra sent Julian a message, asking him to meet her in the private cottage in the royal forest. As soon as she sent the message, she received a call from him. Why are you at the cottage? He asked her. I thought you were on your way to the palace. There's something I want to talk about, and I thought we could use a bit of privacy, she told him. There was a pause on his side before he asked, What's wrong? Nothing, she said, smiling at the worried note in his voice. I'm waiting for you. When she hung up, he contacted her through their mind link instantly, asking whether anything was wrong. She refused to give him any details, insisting that he get to the cottage first. A while later, he showed up at the door, naked, after having run all the way there in his wolf form. Lyra could not help laughing when she saw him. She had prepared a romantic dinner, and there he was, absolutely not dressed for the occasion. You've not been kidnapped, he said, as he caught his breath. Is that what you thought? She asked, laughing. He nodded. Now, can you tell me why I'm here? Lyra took his hand and led him into the cottage. Inside, it was decorated with candles and flowers, with soft music filling the air. We haven't had a date night in a while, she told him when they got to the table. So I arranged one. A date? He asked, eyeing the table and looking around. When did you prepare this? Weren't you at the Luminous Pack all day? I got back early, she told him. When you said we needed to talk in private, I thought it was something bad, he told her. The look on his face easing up. We do have something to talk about, she told him, using a solemn tone. The guarded look returned to his face. What is it? Her face split into a smile. I'm pregnant. Julian blinked, as if he couldn't understand what she had said. Pregnant, she nodded. Yes. He held onto both of her hands. Really? She nodded. He whooped suddenly and picked her up, swirling her around. When he stopped, he gave her a long kiss. When they pulled apart, he caressed her face gently. I'm so happy. I'm going to have a family with you. I'm excited too, she told him. I thank the goddess for bringing you to me, he said. I'll always love and protect you and our little one. Do you think I'll be a good father? Yes, she said with a soft smile. He was a good mate to her, and she knew without a doubt that he would be a good father too. A&C, Shoo, 5. Years later, Lyra walked onto the back porch of the cottage in the royal forest, drawn by the sound of happy children. Her 5-year-old son, Danny, was playing in the backyard with Ariel, Anna and Zero's 5-year-old daughter, and Sam, Beryl, and Asher's 4-year-old son. Anna and Zero were on the other side of the backyard, keeping an eye on the toddlers. The sound of laughter suddenly turned into crying. Lyra looked to see Danny running after Ariel, holding something in his hand. Ariel ran away from him, screaming her little lungs out. "Danny, what are you doing?" Lyra called out. "Stop bullying Ariel." Danny stopped and turned to his mother. "It's just a butterfly. I want to show her." "Well, Ariel is scared of butterflies," Lyra told him. "You should show her something she likes." "Oh," he said, looking at the insect trapped in his hands. Opening his palms, he let the butterfly go. Walking over to Ariel, who had stopped running, he apologized. "I'm sorry. What do you like? I'll get it for you." "I want a spider," Sam said, running up to them. Danny scrunched up his face. "I hate spiders. I'll get you a spider," Ariel told Sam excitedly. She set off running, her tears and butterflies forgotten. Danny hesitated for a moment before he told Sam, "I'll get you a spider." And just like that, the 3 children were running among the flowers and trees again, hunting for a spider. Lyra chuckled at the sight. Whenever the 3 of them got together, they played to no end. Looking at the happy and carefree children filled her with a calming sense of peace. The scars of the past had long healed, and now her days were filled with joy, warmth, and love. Her search for somewhere she belonged ended here, home. She was home, and she couldn't be happier. The end.